Hey, it's Destination Primus Vita Episode 1 Austin. That mouthful of a title belongs to another episodic sci-fi story game. I've played dozens of these, and there is one thing I have never seen before. Episode 2. This has become such a problem that I think I'm going to go ahead and address it. I'm talking about Primus Vita here because it happens to be in the room, but in honesty, I've never seen any of these succeed, and they all fail in the same way. There are only two basic problems with these games, and Primus Vita is an especially noticeable example because they have such a low budget and such a limited capability in terms of having, asset teams and stuff, that they literally couldn't do the things I recommend you do, and instead they did the things I recommend you don't do because they have the technical constraints that force them to. So it's interesting to look at this and see, well, this is how it works if you've got no budget. Why did the people who had a budget do the same things? So let's go ahead and start over. The first thing they do wrong is they open with a text crawl. Text crawls are not needed. You should never use one. It's that simple. You do not have to explain the story. Just start in media res. For this kind of game, the only thing that matters is that we fall in love with your main characters as fast as humanly possible. These are all character-driven games, and we need to just want to see every little thing these characters have to say. We've got to want to hang on their every word. And that text crawl does not help that. An opening cutscene is also standard fare. Usually it's about 30 seconds long, and it establishes who the main character is and what their personal flaw is, because in these sorts of games, the story is usually tightly linked to the personal flaw of the main character. In this case, what we've got is a main character that is obsessed with science and refuses to have friends and relationships and stuff like that. And we have a story about how the Earth had all of its water robbed from it. Those are resonant, and it's very clear that they support each other rather directly, to the point where I wouldn't be surprised if there is no actual story here. It's just like, oh, it was all just her dream. But, the idea is pretty obvious. They resonate very well. If she can restore the oceans to the planet Earth, then she'll also restore her own personal connections to the people around her. Ooh, fancy. And it's not a bad setup at all, but it has to be dealt with character first, not plot first. The plot is really irrelevant. Now here's the dream sequence. Dream sequences are always a mistake. I have seen a couple of games where dream sequences work, usually fantasy games. They don't work in a sci-fi game, especially not in the first 10 minutes of a sci-fi game, because they are not connected to the sci-fi. This does not help me fall in love with the characters. It does not help me fall in love with the world or the conceit of the world. It's just showing off. It's just you trying to show me that you can build a level. It's just you trying to show me that there's something worth looking at. Well, put something worth looking at in your world. So the concept of this dream is that we're being trained up for our actual landing on this new world. So here, let me pitch you a different take. There's a large gym on the spaceship, and all of the other crew members have gotten together to put together an obstacle course made out of styrofoam stones. It's the exact same plot, exact same progression, exact same tutorial sequence, except it is all made out of trashy styrofoam blocks, and our crew member friends are constantly ribbing us about how unprepared we are, or trying to get us on board with it and trying to buy into it. That sort of thing would be really great. It would be a perfect way to get us into the world by introducing us to the characters and the mission without needing to resort to this distracting idea that everything is always just going to be a dream.
In fact, your ability for humor is worryingly low.
One of the issues this game has is lots of mandatory text dumps, so don't do that. Text dumps should always be optional. The player should always go off the beaten track and click on something to get a text dump. You should never have one be mandatory because it feels like you're forcing the player to do stuff. And really, that's the main problem with all of these openings. They are all built, and all of the sci-fi episodic games, they're always built to force you to do what the game wants you to do in such a blatant and obnoxious way that it's almost impossible to respect them. It's like, well, they're not respecting me. Why should I respect them? It's really strange because it's not like pressing WSAD or holding shift to run is a new idea. You do not need a 5-minute tutorial where you do not let me press shift to run until you tell me it's possible. But if you did, just make me sleepy or carrying something. Give me an in-world reason why I can't run. It makes your tutorial much more interesting. The puzzles are not great in this game, but I guess that's kind of okay because they're not the point of the game. They're very clicky. You have to really click on a lot of stuff, and it's not really my favorite kind of puzzle. But, you know, that's not what we're talking about here in terms of why you might like or dislike this game. Come on. Come on. There. Here's an action sequence. Well, hold on. I have to solve this last piece. Solve. I have to drag this down. Yep. Here's an action sequence, but this action sequence is totally just forgettable because we're in a dream. We don't care. Nothing's going to happen. We're in a dream. But if, on the other hand, we were in the gym and they were throwing, you know, giant plushies at us, that would be hilarious. So, you know, think about how you can actually show us. If you're going to create a tutorial level, if you're going to create a plot event where you're trying to explain the plot, try and figure out how you can put all of your characterization into it. Try and figure out how we can fall in love with all of your characters while you're explaining plot, because otherwise you're not doing your job as a writer. Here's the glitch. Sci-fi dreams always have glitches in them because that connects them to the outside world, otherwise they would just be dreams. But you know what else is connected to the outside world? The outside world. Don't use dream sequences.
Seriously, Nim? Anybody could do the job, but you send me my brother.
So this is the worst way you can introduce characters, and this is done this way because of the constraints of this setup. But this is just like, they're going to tell us, I felt this way. Well, how did you feel? Why did you feel? I felt that way because of this. Oh my god. It is just telling. And yes, the dialogue is written competently and it's voice acted competently for the most part. So it's not terrible. It doesn't fail completely. But this is a situation where it makes a lot more sense for us to actually see this happen in real time. The story here is that our brother threw a party for our new crew members and we didn't show up. And he got really angry about it. So imagine if we could see all of this happen in real time with us, you know, yelling at people. More text. So the idea here is that she hates people who are drinking and smoking because, you know, fires are a huge problem and it's just a waste of time. And okay, why doesn't she walk into the party as the party is going on and complain? This is not something that takes a genius. Show, don't tell. Now, the reason that that didn't happen is because they don't have character animations, which I'll show you in a minute here. But I think that they could have leaned into their lack of character animations and just made a highly stylized game. I don't think they had to make everything this weird, static dream sequence where they constantly tell you what to think.
He was annoyed that I didn't go to his crew party. The thing is, I saw no reason to celebrate our imminent deaths.
You mean you saw no reason to be part of a team that could save your life on the upcoming mission? No reason to go to a party that your own brother personally invited you to. And you never took the time to let me know you weren't coming.
Here we go again. As if there weren't more important things to do than getting drunk and trashing your place.
So they are going to slowly unroll the same basic sequence of events that you know, you'd expect here. He really wanted his sister to come to the party. He had a whole thing planned out. He was going to tell all of his buddies, all of his new crew members, that she was really cool and that, you know, they should get along with her even though she's kind of a nice bitch. And she ruined it. So this is something where, as story beats go, it's a fine story beat to set up these characters, but it's not structured correctly. It's structured entirely as a stack of showing, or telling rather than showing, and that's just not good enough. Imagine if the opening scene was us in our lab, and we're, you know, learning the basic tutorial sequence. You know, how do you do the puzzles? You do them like this. And once we finish, our brother busts in and is like, "Why aren't you at the party? I invited you. Why are you still here? You get dressed. You come to the party." And then we could have a really touching little setup where you say things like, I hate parties and I've got work to do. And he'll be like, "No, this is really, you know, critical. I'm trying to build, you know, mission cohesion. I'm trying to build our team up." And she'd be like, "Oh, come on, kid. You're my kid brother." And he's like, And then in the end, he drags you to the party anyway, where you complain about how they're going to start fires and meet the other crew members. This is a really solid setup for a lot of reasons, but the number one reason is that it helps you to fall in love with these two characters. They're both flawed. The character on the right here is the main character, and she has no personal relationships. She hates being with people. And the person on the left is just over his head trying to get the crew together, trying to get the safeties worked out and all that stuff. And he's pushy. So the two characters are both flawed, but we can fall in love with them because they can work with those flaws. She still loves her brother. She's willing to go to the party if he really insists. And he loves her, and he's willing to tell his whole crew in person that she is the most important person on the crew and that she's really quite nice. This is something which would make us love these characters if we saw it happen. Getting it explained to us after the fact in a dream sequence will not do that. It just doesn't have the structure to do that. It's even worse in a dream sequence because who knows how he really feels. This is a robot trying to convince us that our teammates love us. So they could do literally anything. They could be like, "Oh yeah, we all love you. You're great." And that's what they do. It's like, well, how do I know that this is how they really feel? These are figments, literal figments of my imagination.
It's okay. I just don't shame.
So they're just continuing to tell us the things that we're supposed to understand about the world and about these characters rather than show us. And it's just because they don't have any animations. If they had animations, then this would be a lot different, I imagine. I don't believe that this is something that they did on purpose. I think it's something we were forced into.
In my power to keep you all safe. That means making you all work together as a team, my sister included. And if a little get-together can help that, why not? Everyone else showed up, all willing to do what it takes.
Kobe, it wasn't like that.
That's something that should have been explained in person, not in a dream.
He put so much effort into his speech. I had no idea it meant so much to him.
So now what we're going to do is watch their attempt at character animations.
If we're to save the world, well, we can only do it.
See, lines like this would make you fall in love with these characters if they were here, but they're not. Anyway, here is their method of animating characters, and you can see why they decided to go with this dream sequence. And as far as I can tell, the whole game is a dream sequence. I haven't played it through all the way, though. But basically, I think that this could have worked. I think that their lack of animations, this way that they blur between very, very basic poses, I think that could have made it a very stylized game in a real situation. You wouldn't have had to use a dream sequence. You could have just said it's a stylized game. I've seen plenty of games that do that, and they do it pretty well. But these episodic sci-fi games, they really insist on masking everything by just pretending it all happened in the past, or everything is a dream sequence, or everything is audio logs, or whatever. It's not actually here, and that is not good enough. If you want us to fall in love with your characters, they've got to be there. And that's the most important thing about any of these games. You've got to immediately, first 5 minutes of the game, we have to fall hard for all of the main characters. We have to want to know what they're going to say next, want to know what they're going to do next. We have to think, oh man, these are really great characters. But we can't do that if it's all fragmented and disrupted and delivered to us piecemeal like this. It just has no structure. And it hasn't got the muscle it needs. And that is my core problem with these sci-fi storytelling games. And I think that to some extent all of the games have these flaws because of their constraints, because they don't have the money to hire another animator or to figure out the best way to set up a world or whatever like that. But you can set things up in such a way that that it works. If you have constraints, you can embrace them, but make sure to embrace them in a way that makes your story more interesting rather than sabotaging it. If you can't animate your characters, have a world where your characters aren't animated, rather than just making everything a dream sequence. It's almost impossible for me to get into this game because I know it's just a dream sequence. I have no way of knowing whether or not there actually is any problem with Earth, or whether aliens actually did steal the water, because it's just one floating robot talking to one lady who has serious personal problems that echo the storyline a little too closely. So, yeah, as I said, this game has a very low budget. I'm not trying to rag on this game for doing poorly, because it can't do well. It can't do these things any better because it would take more money. But I really think that if you are going to make this kind of game, if you're thinking about creating this kind of game, seriously consider how you can show rather than tell. Your priority is to make us love your characters within 5 minutes. Within 2 minutes would be better. And the easiest way to think about that is, can you make your opening sequence with no text, aside from subtitles? No text at all. No scrolling text explaining the situation. No info dumps when you click on something. Just all us in the game world doing game world things. If you can't, maybe your story isn't quite there yet. Anyway, thanks for listening, and I'll see you around.